This is Captain Willie. He pilots a steamboat across the ocean, delivering goods for a living. The story of Captain Willie is a spine-chilling tale of being isolated at sea with nothing around but open ocean for miles. I'm your host Nox, and I turn horror games into documentary-style stories. This one will be told through the diary of Pete, the deckhand under Captain Willie. April 28th, 1929, Day 1. Pete's at-sea diary isn't anything special here. He details his first day on the boat. He mostly spends his time exploring the ship, learning the proper terms, and knowing what tools are available. Pete is the new deckhand on the steamboat working under Captain Willie. It's an interesting position. It's literally do everything but pilot the boat, but you have to do that every once in a while too. Pete approaches Captain Willie. His first task is to clean the deck. He makes his way down to the deck with a bucket and a scrubbing brush. Pete can smell the salt in the air from the ocean. They haven't been at sea long, and he can already see nothing but vast, open ocean around him. It takes hours, but Pete on his hands and knees scrubs and scrubs some more until the deck is pristine. Pete reports back to Captain Willie, who instructs him to chop the potatoes so they'll be ready for dinner. Pete is ecstatic for an easy task that he can sit down and do. Using a basic kitchen knife, he chops potatoes, dropping the slices into a bucket until it's overflowing. Upon reporting back to Captain Willie, Pete is then instructed to shovel coal into the fires powering the steamboat. A bit rougher of a task, but Pete is living the dream of traveling the world on the boat. When this is done, Pete is relieved to hear Captain Willie tell him that nothing further is needed of him for the day. Pete resolves to relax and notes his positive energy and excitement at the new job in his diary. April 29th, 1929, Day 2. Pete's day is pretty similar to the day before. Not a whole lot of variation can exist on a steamboat going in one direction, right? While chopping the potatoes for the day, Pete looks up and sees Captain Willie just staring at him, almost nothing behind his black eyes. "Hey, can you pilot the boat for a little bit?" requests the captain. "I need to check on some things." Pete finds this odd because usually Captain Willie just has him check things. Pete agrees and makes his way and takes control of the helm. Pete stands at the helm, feeling the warm breeze of the ocean air blow across him. The wheel is hard to keep straight. Could it be the choppy waters? Pete has never piloted a boat before, but he does his best, or so he wrote. He eventually looks behind him to see the captain inches from him. Pete jumps in a startle. He can never hear Captain Willie moving around. The rest of the day in the diary is rather uneventful. April 30th, Day 3. The day is mostly repetitive until Captain Willie asks Pete to go below deck and bring up more potatoes. Pete explains here that he's surprised that they just eat potatoes every day. Even though it's only the third day at sea, Pete has never been below deck, but does what he's told. Pete opens the hatch on the deck and carefully, while carrying a candle, descends below deck. The air is dusty down there. Pete looks around and finds a variety of sacks, some labeled with the letter C that he can only assume is for coal. The sacks with a P must be potatoes. Unable to fight his curiosity, Pete looks around more. Surely there will be food other than potatoes down here, he thinks to himself. Upon looking around, Pete finds bones scattered around. "Why are there bones down here?" he asks aloud. There must have been meat at some point if bones are discarded everywhere. Pete sighs and returns up top with the potatoes. When reporting to the captain, Captain Willie warns Pete not to go wandering down below deck without permission. Strange, Pete thinks to himself. While chopping potatoes for the day, Pete looks up and catches Willie looking at him. Pete gasps. He didn't even hear the door open, much less the captain walking around. The captain backs out of the doorway and closes the door. Pete is left unnerved, but tries to remind himself that Captain Willie is often isolated and away from people. The diary entry has Pete's ending notation here, but there's an addendum that something happened in the middle of the night. Pete mentions hearing footsteps through the ship. Unable to sleep, he wanders around to see what Captain Willie is up to. Not finding him anywhere, he decides to look below deck. When Willie descends the stairs, he sees the glow of candlelight in the back behind all the crates. Pete walks up to Willie. Willie doesn't look at him. "What are you doing here?" asks the captain. "Go to sleep," he instructs. May 1st, Day 4. While reporting to Captain Willie for daily tasks, the captain informs Pete that they may be lost, but he has everything under control and Pete shouldn't worry about it. Pete performs his typical task, including fetching a sack from below deck. He takes this opportunity to try and look around to see what the captain was up to the night before, but finds nothing interesting. Pete only mentions here that Willie pointed out that he took his time. May 5th, Day 9. Pete reports to Captain Willie for morning task. The captain explains that he has no idea where in the ocean they are. "I don't want to worry you," he says, but it's starting to look hopeless. Captain Willie instructs Pete to do his routine task to maintain some semblance of routine and not to panic. Pete notices the potato bin is empty and goes below deck to find more potatoes, only to discover that there are none left. They were only supposed to be at sea for a few days and only had enough food for such a duration. The thought of having only potatoes for 9 days kind of gives me stomach pain. May 14th, day 18. In the middle of the night, the captain knocks on Pete's door. Groggy, Pete gets up. Captain Willie requests that Pete take control of the helm since the waters are choppy and Willie needs to rest. Pete, fighting to keep his eyes open, holds the helm as steady as he can until the captain returns a bit later. May 15th, day 19. When reporting for task, Pete notices the captain is low of energy. He barely talks, keeping his sentences to a word or two. Pete notices his own energy waning. They've both been 10 days with no food at this point, though Pete has worked significantly harder doing manual labor. May 16th, day 20. In the middle of the night, Pete hears all kinds of commotion. Footsteps, the creaking of wood, the sliding of crates, the splashing of the ocean against the boat. The movement sounds move beneath him. The captain must be below deck for some reason. Pete gets up slowly, his body barely responding due to the lack of nutrition. His muscles ache and burn as he walks. Pete makes his way down below deck with his candle and notices a light at the back. The captain calls out to him. "You know how we have no food?" he says. "Well, I figured it out. I'll give you a 30-second head start." The realization dawned on Pete. In desperation and a lack of proper nutrients to fuel reasoning, the captain had resolved to killing Pete and likely eating him. Pete blows out his candle to hide better in the dark. When Pete catches a glimpse of the captain again, he describes him as abnormal, his mouth opened large and wide, dozens of teeth inside of his mouth ready to tear Pete's flesh from bone, his eyes pitch black and lacking all soul. Now I wonder, did Pete actually see something supernatural or paranormal, or was it purely hysteria fueled by the lack of food and faced with the very real danger that the captain wanted to kill and eat him? Pete manages to hide in the dark from Captain Willie. The captain searches for him frantically. Pete finds the lifeboat key that he remembered glimpsing earlier, his memory not betraying him. The only way he survives is to get off the steamboat. Pete accomplishes getting the lifeboat down from the boat and into the water, the grinding of the steel cables lowering the boat, revealing his location. The captain screams from behind him. Pete runs and jumps off the boat before the lifeboat gets too far away. Soaking wet in the cold of the night, he sits in the lifeboat. Captain Willie staring at him from the stern, the boats increasing distance between each other. We have Pete's diary here. Does that mean that Pete survived the journey and made it home safely to tell the tale? Or did he perish at sea and his diary somehow survived the journey? Leave a comment down below with what you think happened to Pete.